This element is trash, and I am so annoyed that they did this to you. Hey guys, it's me, Tantacles, here with another tier list. Today, I'm going to be ranking all of the white elements in Chrono Cross. You guys have been asking for a lot more Chrono Cross content, and I am here to give it to you. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more gaming content. The white element is a very useful element because you have Surge in your party for almost all of the game. He has a great magic stat and can use most elements pretty effectively. And of course, he gets a bonus for using white elements. So while in the other colors, innate-only elements have severe limitations, because you always have Surge, you're not as limited when it comes to white elements. Speaking of that, the first element is AntiBlack. This element prevents enemies from using black elements. It can be somewhat useful, but generally doesn't work on bosses, and it can only be equipped by white innate characters, which again, isn't that much of a limitation because you almost always have Surge in your party. Therefore, this element is going to go into the B tier. Next up is Full Revival. This element is level 5, white innate only, and provides a full revive to any character. Because Surge is on your team, this element is S tier. If you have this, there's no reason not to have it equipped all the time. Reviving is important, and your characters probably will die at some point in this game. And because revival elements are so limited, you want to use every single one that you can. Holy Healing is next, and this is a level 6 element that is white innate only and heals your entire party and removes all status effects. Again, Surge is in your party for most of the game, so it goes into the A tier. Its biggest limitation is that it can't be, I was about to say Junction. Its biggest limitation is that it can't be assigned below level 4, so you're generally going to want to put it in level 4, but it would be great if you could put this on level 2. You just can't, so it has to go into the A tier instead of the S tier. Holy Light Trap is next, and this is an S tier element, and it's an S tier element for one fight, the fight against Miguel. Miguel uses Holy Light pretty consistently every time he is fought, and so this will save your team. It will most likely kill everyone but Surge, and while Surge can probably just finish the battle on his own, it is really nice not to have to worry about that. And the Holy Light element, which is up next, is Bonkers Broken and amazing, and it's going to go into the S tier as well. It is a level 5 white element that can be equipped on anyone, and it has great power. It also immediately eliminates any undead monsters. Now, granted, the power from it will usually do that anyway because it's white innate and most undead monsters are going to be black in this game, but still very useful just in case you don't get the kill. Next up is Magnify, which is a level 6 white innate only element that negates all magic attacks against one of your allies. This is going to go into the A tier. The reason it's not an S tier is because it only affects one person, so often you're better off just using attack elements to finish battles faster. However, in fights like the Dario fight, where he may just eliminate white innate characters very quickly, you can use this on somebody like Riddell or Surge to prevent him from killing you. It blocks his text completely and is extremely useful. Next up is Magnify, and here's a disclaimer, I don't use Magnify, however, it goes into the A tier. Now, Magnify is a level 6 element that increases all element damage by 1.5. It does it for both enemies and for allies. What this means is that you can power through fights very quickly with the correct elemental magic. Now, if you're in a fight with strong element users, this isn't the greatest. However, in longer battles where you're going to have limited element coverage, you may want to use this near the beginning of the battle to get extreme damage off initially so that you can finish the fight faster. Next up is Meteor Shower, which will go to the top of the B tier. It's a level 4 element that hits all enemies for moderate damage. It's quite good in random encounters, however in bosses it falls off a bit because it's not single target and loses a bunch of power. On the other hand, Photon Beam, which is a single target level 3 offensive element, goes into the A tier above Magnify, and it will give you better damage to a single target than Meteor Shower will at the same element level. Meteorite is next, and it's going to go into the C tier. Not because it isn't good, but because you get Photon Beams reasonably early and they quickly outclass Meteorite. Similarly, Photon Ray is also going into the C tier just above Meteorite, but only because it's available earlier. If Meteorite were available at the beginning of the game from pots like Photon Ray were, it would be above it. Photon Ray is level 1, Meteorite is level 2. Next up is Panacea, which is a level 4 consumable element that removes all status effects. This is going to go into the D tier. The reason for this is simply that you have Purify, which does the same thing but can be allocated to any level. They both remove status effects, but for Panaceas, you have to put them in the level 4 slot. Now, they do have some advantages over Purify, namely that you can use them multiple times in one battle, but generally you're not going to need to. Purify gets the job done and can be allocated to level 1, which means you can use a less valuable slot for it. So Purify is going to go into the B tier. Now, status effects aren't actually that deleterious in the game with the exception of freeze, so it's not going to be that great of a spell, but especially when your characters are frozen and sometimes when they're poisoned or fatigued, it can be very useful. Next up is Recoveral, which is a level 3 spell that recovers HP for the entire party. It's going into the S tier. This is a spell that when you get it, it totally changes the way you're able to play the game. It's often worthwhile to put this in the level 2 or the level 3 slot, if not higher if you really need it, because it heals a lot of damage, and of course Surge can use it effectively because he's white element. Not a broken spell, but extremely useful. Revive is next, and it's going to go into the top of A tier. It's a level 1 revival spell that can be allocated to any element level. And as I mentioned before with full revival, revival spells in this game are few and far between, but are very valuable because there are certain squishier characters that will just die to anything. Revive is also pretty limited in the game, which makes it feel very precious, and it is just as precious as it feels. Saints is next, and this is the final summon spell for the white element. It does big damage to all enemies, and it heals your entire party. I think it's the most useful of all the summons. Of course, like all summons, it is innate only, and Saints is level 8, so it can only be allocated to level 8. And that limits it significantly. And because it's a summon, the entire field has to be white for you to use it. Because of these limitations, it goes into the bottom of the A tier. Honestly, it's a lot easier to just use Magnify and then hit the enemy with something like Holy Light. It will likely do about as much damage, and granted you don't get the healing, but there are plenty of white healing spells available. You also, of course, need Saints to get your white rainbow materials, because Unicorn is an utterly trash spell, and I'm going to do that next because Unicorn is trash tier. It is the worst spell in the entire game. Literally, all it does is raise defense and magic defense, and it has no offensive potential. All of the other summon elements you can allocate to level 5 and then do a lot of damage with them, collect your rainbow elements. With Unicorn, you cannot do that. And of course, because of that, the Unicorn Trap, oh, I put the Unicorn Trap in there already. The Unicorn Trap is also going to be D tier. This element is trash, and I am so annoyed that they did this to Unicorn. I understand that unicorns are healers, but so are the Saints, and they get to fight. Why not Unicorn? Next up is Strong-Minded, which is a level 4 spell that increases magic defense, and I think this is somewhat useful, but I'm going to put it in the B tier. I would rather spend my time doing things that let me do more damage to the enemy, rather than boosting my own defenses. If you can power through the fights quickly, then you don't need defense as much. And of course, for that reason, Weakminded is going to go into the A tier, just above Saints. The combination of Weakminded and Magnify can be incredibly broken. Assuming they both hit, you can increase your damage by a ton with these two spells. And of course, both of them can be cast by non-white innate characters, and then have Surge cast Holy Light or Ultranova, which will totally wreck everything. Turn White is next, and it's going to go into the D tier. Now, the problem with Turn White, again, is that Surge is always in your party, so most of the time you don't want to turn things white because you want Surge to do the maximum damage possible. You'll just be nerfing all of your white elements if you use this, and it's not worthwhile. Hey guys, on further reflection after recording, I realized that this is actually B tier because Turn White is very useful when Lynx is your main character. So Turn White, B tier. Next is Ultranova, and it's going to go into the A tier, right at the top. It's a level 6 offensive spell that's white innate only, but again, Surge is in your party for most of the game, so you can just slam enemies with this once you get it. The only problem with it is availability. You have to trap this spell, and it's only available from a couple of monsters in the game. If it were more available and easier to get, and you didn't have to spend a million years waiting for monsters to cast it, it would be S tier, but it's not, so it goes in A tier. Ultranova Trap is your trap for Ultranova, and it is going to go at the bottom of A tier. Of course, useful if it works, but it just takes forever for enemies to cast Ultranova, and generally, if you want to, you can just blaze through the battle very quickly without even worrying about it. I wish there were more ways to get Ultranova in the game, but they decided, hey, it's too powerful, which makes sense since Surge can use it. I'm pretty sure they did this because Surge is always in your party, because they've given you pretty easy ways to get a lot of the other level 6 elements, but I still hate it. I really want Ultranova spells. And the final spell is Whiteout. This is a garbage consumable. It heals all white status effects. You have Purify, you have Holy Healing, you have Panacea. Just use those instead. That's it. Here's another tier list up top. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And next up is going to be the black element tier list. Bye-bye.